Hey guys, welcome back to another educational video. This is the youtube.com/generic tech support channel. If you guys are watching this, you should know that everything we do is for educational value. All the software is purchased or used under legal availability. This channel does not promote or suggest the use of pirated software. All links are located on the Tech Guy 1 wiki page. This channel, again, is for educational purposes only. Like and subscribe for more content. I provide you guys the best practices or best experience and insight into doing things, but I don't know everything. So if you guys know something that I don't, please leave it in the comments. Thanks again for watching. Hey guys, so I got another one today. Today's operating system is Harbour of Tech Edition. I'm not entirely sure what it is because it was marketed as a Mac OS clone. But clearly, as we can see, we are installing a Windows-based operating system. So your guess is as good as mine as to what this actually is. Now, the interesting thing is on boot, we got the Windows splash screen here. However, on post, we had an Apple spinning little wheel like you would get on an Apple operating system. So I'm wondering if somebody attempted to clone or maybe combine two different operating systems to make one. So let's do the installation and see what we actually have. So far this looks like Windows 10. So hopefully that's what it is. I'm not entirely sure. Like I said, once we get this installed, we'll be able to dive into this thing and figure out specifically what it is and what it's not. Okay guys, so it just rebooted. We just came back up and this is the first screen we're greeted with on boot. And I'll be honest, it does look a lot like, well, honestly, I think it looks a lot like Ubuntu. Not so much Mac OS, but maybe Ubuntu. With that said, it is definitely different. I kind of like the wrapper. It's kind of cool. Let's do what this thing asks us to do. Let's save space by clicking Y and see what actually takes place. So inside of our actual command script here, whatever this thing's actually doing, well, I can tell you what it's doing. It's not actually removing anything. It's compressing files. We can see the compressing files. Yeah, that saves storage space, but that's not good for performance because then we're going to have to expand or uncompress the files to read them and then recompress them. So the I/O on the disk at least is going to be limiting. So yeah, we'll lose space. I mean, we'll shrink the OS, but it's going to be, you know, we're going to lose performance along with it. So in my opinion, probably should have skipped this had I known it was going to actually do the compression. But let's let it continue and finish out, and then we'll test drive the rest of this thing. Hey guys, so we're back up now. The Harbour of Tech edition here of what, again, I assume this is Windows 10. We're going to have to take a look, see specifically what this OS is, but it finished doing the compression on the OS and it rebooted itself and it's back up and running now. As you can see, it does look Linux-esque. I don't want to call it Mac, right? So we have some Macintosh-like icons in here that make it look, I guess, if somebody never used a Mac OS, they might think, oh, look, Mac. But it's really not. I mean, I honestly think this looks a lot more like Ubuntu than it does like Mac, with the exception of a little Apple symbol up here, which is the start menu. So I guess let's first just right-click and go to Properties in here and see what this actually is. So it's interesting. It identifies as Mac OS, but just because it identifies it doesn't mean it is. So here we go. Yeah, here we go. It's Windows 11 Pro Insider Preview. That's interesting. So this is, I guess, the first release of Windows 11. I got to tell you, the fact that the menu system is like this, and quite frankly, the old menu system exists in here to make it look like Windows 10. This is probably the best version of Windows 11 I've seen so far. Okay, so before we start digging into this thing further, let's first install VM tools so we can get this in full screen so it's not so small and letterbox like this. Give me a couple seconds here. Let's get that installed, then we'll reboot the system, and we will take a look at what this thing has to offer. So interestingly enough, we're not getting the ability to actually install VMware tools on here. Now, I don't know if it's because this is the preview edition or maybe something screwed up in the actual OS from the changes that took place during that compression. That's also a possibility. But I don't have the ability to install VMware tools on the system. Now, I tried to use the built-in one for Windows 10 and Windows 11, and it wasn't an option to install it. So I figured maybe we'd try the legacy version, and clearly you could see the legacy version also does not install. So unfortunately, for the sake of this video, we may have to deal with the fact that this is a square picture, just because I don't really have the ability to install the tools. I'll try to get the updated tool for the later version to see if that will make any difference, and maybe that will help. But so far, that's the first setback, is that it cannot run executables in CDs or in ISO files, which is a bizarre situation to have. Okay, so I don't know if you guys could see it, but for whatever reason, it was really bizarre. We literally have two different D drives. Now, they are both the same drive, but D drive is broken up into two different sets of folders. And then we have D drive down here in a secondary or separate set of folders. I don't actually understand what's going on. So I could run as administrator, but it doesn't seem to do anything. So there's something funky with the UI on this thing that I don't actually have full control. And I realize that this actually got smaller on your screen. It's because the recorder is not zoomed in like it was prior, just because I had to switch between two different machines to pull the actual executables out. So right now, I don't have a way to install, well, it appears at least, I don't have a way to install VMware tools on this thing. Maybe if we go through command line. Okay, so that doesn't work. Let's try this again. Okay, guys, so as you can see, we're back here in the system. I would really love to install VMware tools. You can see that we actually have two D drives. I don't actually know why we have two D drives, because we only have one connected drive, and obviously you can't have duplicate drive letters. So why am I seeing two D drives underneath this PC? Unless it's something funky with the menus, which is possible. It is Windows 11 after all. This is our installation disk for VMware tools, and you'll notice that I don't have an executable, but I do have an SH file. So I'm wondering, because this looks like Linux, maybe VMware is confused. So what I did is I actually copied the executable over, but even with the executable over, for whatever reason, the system can't seem to see or run the executable. So I don't know, I'm thinking maybe command line. I noticed that we do have UAC disabled, so that's a problem, but I'm sure we'll notice that when we run our Tenable scan against this thing. But let's do a D drive thing here and do dir and see if we could actually see the executable. Maybe there's something just funky in the GUI. No. So I'm wondering, maybe since we can't run it that way, maybe we should just check to see what the heck this thing is, right? So let's do CLS. Let's go back to our C. Let's do CLS again. Let's do a system info. So we are running Windows 11 Pro Insider Preview. Interestingly enough, I do believe that build number is 23H2. So I think this is a relatively new image or a new OS. I don't see much else in the way of anything weird or funky. I can tell you that we have available physical memory, 7120. So what are we using? We're using a gig and 11 meg. That's pretty good. That's not bad for a Windows 11 operating, especially 23H2. 835 megs is being used for your page file. That's excellent. So there's really no or at least not that much overhead on this thing, which is pretty nice. But then again, it did run through that script and compress and get rid of a lot of the junk, the crap. Let's see what this does. Okay, well that brings us actually to control panel. It's interesting that settings wouldn't be linked to settings, but it is linked to control panel. Let's see what we got in the add remove programs. So not much. All pretty normal stuff, right? So we've seen this in a variety of other builds. What do we got in here? Does that bring us to... okay, so that's the App Store for Microsoft. Assuming this is going to open Notepad and not WordPad. Yep, so that's Notepad. Do we have okay, so the built-in calendar. I'm assuming this is just... yep, so Maps. iTunes, built-in Microsoft Mail. Yeah. Is this actual Safari? No, it's Google Chrome. Of course it is. That's the start button, which I don't really understand the point of that. Why would you... I mean, I could see that opening File Explorer, but opening the start menu seems crazy to me. Let's go in the Finder and see what that does. That opens up, well, basically my computer or this PC, or Finder, I guess. You can see VMware Tools, which obviously has no executable. And then hard drive space, so we have 33.8 gigs free of a 39.9 gig drive. So it's a 40 gig drive and then obviously partitioned, right? So you lost that partition table. So we do have a small OS, small footprint. It's not particularly heavy. It seems to run relatively well. I mean, obviously having the ability to install VMware Tools would be nice, but it is also possible that something's funky in the VMware Tools for 23H2, because 23H2 is newer than the VMware player that's actually running this currently. So as I'm sitting here, I'm actually realized what I did, right? So if I expand this PC, since they sit next to each other, and because of the color and how dark it is, and also because I'm old, they just look like a duplicate, but they're not a duplicate. It is a single file. It's just, you know, it's in two different locations. One's in the sub-menu, one's in the primary menu. So let's take a look at what else we got going on here. Let's see what this thing actually has going on. Do we have any sharing turned on? No. Well, that looks good and out of the box. So far we've looked at control panel. There's not too much in there. Now, I will throw down in the comments, if Google will allow me, the link to the Harbour Tech's YouTube channel. I'd suggest you check them out. We'll still run a scan on this thing and see what it comes back with. I mean, we could compare this to a vanilla version of 23H2 and see how this compares from a security perspective between the two operating systems through the Nessus scanner. As far as the OS is concerned, it does look relatively lightweight. I don't see too much in here when it comes to anything funky, bizarre, or alarming. It all looks pretty standard, pretty normal configuration for these types of homebrew operating systems. With that said, you know, there are obviously caveats to this, because certain executables don't run. The UI is difficult to see if you're old, because everything's very small, because again, I can't make it bigger. So keep in mind, as small as this looks on your screen right now, it's smaller on mine. I think right now this is a 1024 by 768. I think is about the same size as what it is now. It's on a screen that's a 33-inch or 34-inch widescreen curved, but because of the 1024 by 7, it's like looking at a postage stamp. So on a piece of like 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So it's very small. I think what we'll have to do here is we're going to have to test this thing and see how it looks in our Nessus scanner. And then we can jump back into the OS and we can look further into the OS. But I got to be honest with you, it is smooth. It does run well. I don't see any bugs as far as like funky things going on where you can't, right click doesn't work, or start menu funkiness or bizarreness. So it seems to be a pretty well designed and implemented operating system. I'm just curious what it looks like from a security standpoint, where we are in our 23H2 build. Because again, it is a preview, and while there's really nothing wrong with the preview, you are running the beta build. It's not the release build, so any kind of bugs that you have in the beta build, they exist in what you're running, which is, it could be good, it could be bad. I mean, you got to figure that I don't think Microsoft has actually done any actual testing of any of the updates they've released. I think they use the general public to run their tests. So as a result, I mean, you really may not be getting much of a difference between what's available and what's new. So at any rate, before I talk your ear off, let's run a Nessa scan on this thing and see what it looks like. So before we cut over to our Nessa scanner, I figured I would give you just a quick refresh here. So this is Windows 11. This isn't the preview edition, but it is 23H2. So let's take a look in comparison for performance reasons, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to Task Manager here so we can take a look real quick. And we're at, now, there's nothing, I mean, there's a command prompt to shut the firewall off, right? So that way we run our Nessa scan. The command prompt really shouldn't take that much. This machine uses almost 3 gigs of memory at idle to run, and 50% of the CPU. And there's nothing else running on the system. So the customized operating system, the Harbour Text operating system, is actually, aside from the funkiness of the way it looks, is or now we're up to 3.3 gigs of memory at idle. So is really 1/3 the footprint as far as the memory utilization, and 61, 51, 52% CPU utilization at idle is just not acceptable. So far, we're not even like this. The disk queue is at 25%, 20%, 17%. For what? We're at idle. So, I mean, to me, Windows 11 is a flaming pile of garbage, and I've kind of said this, I think, multiple times in multiple videos at this point, but it's amazing to me that people that are not Microsoft, that don't have the bankroll of Microsoft, can spend an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours a day, 3 days a week, whatever it is, and trim so much fat out of the Microsoft Windows operating system that they could reduce the footprint by 1/3. They reduced the footprint by 1/3, and that's somebody that basically did the configuration at home in front of a computer, a desktop of some kind. They reconfigured the desktop operating system to lose 1/3 of weight, which, I mean, it's just mind-blowing to me that these companies pay millions of dollars for development, and then somebody, probably a young person, sits in front of a computer at their house and trims out it's night and day. It just blows my mind that this is the best Microsoft can offer. Oh, and for the record, I haven't started the scan yet, so we can't even blame the scan for the memory utilization and the CPU utilization. That's literally the system itself at idle. So I'm going to stop and just move on to our Nessa scan, because if I can't say a nice thing about Windows 11. I just can't. There's really nothing about it. There's nothing about Windows 11 that I think is good. I mean, even the colors annoy me. So yeah. All right. So let's scan this pile of flaming garbage. Okay. One last thing, and then I will get us into our Nessa scan. Is just for the sake of what this is, I built the system originally because I was going to build a headless gaming system to showcase the ability to create performance increase in order for us to run a Windows 11 desktop and actually increase the performance. So that's what this was originally built for. I may or may not release that video. We'll see. I still have to do the editing on it to actually get it out there. But it does have the Windows updates on it. So we can see the 5 hotfixes installed. But I guess the thing that it was built 10/2/24 at 10:19 a.m. Right, so it is 10/3/24 according to the the taskbar here, right? So the calendar, the clock, right? So it's been a day and 2 hours. And in a day and 2 hours, 5.1 gigs of memory used, 63% to idle the system with the updates installed. So that's why when I say, I would nominate this as being worse than Microsoft ME, that's why. I think that companies out there right now that are trying to make that decision, what operating system to go to, as much as I hate to say it, the Mac OS looks pretty good. So does Linux. I mean, you could save yourself a lot of money on hardware if you buy something that's not Microsoft, specifically Windows 11, or just continue to run your Windows 10 systems. Wait for Microsoft to actually fix this pile of garbage. I wouldn't adopt it, and I wouldn't spend my hard-earned money on something that's basically you're the beta tester. And realistically, based on how terrible this thing is, I would even argue that if you're going to run Windows 11 and you have no choice, maybe one of those homebrews is not a bad idea after all. All right, so as I stated before, now we'll definitely jump into our scanner. Okay, guys, so scanner completed. It is much later than when I stopped the previous video. Got caught up in other stuff and had to finish out the day, so we're kicking this off now. So we ran a scan against our 23H2 Vanilla Edition and our 23H2 Harbour Text Edition. And I got to tell you, I'm actually pleasantly surprised by the outcome. So the first thing we'll do is just jump into our Vanilla Edition so you can take a look. We have 61 info and 1 medium. And the medium, again, is the SMB signing thing. So that's a known issue. That's relatively easy to fix. So not really overly concerned with that. The fix for this is actually in the wiki, if you guys are really interested in that. But that said, 61 info and 1 medium. That's the out-of-the-box configuration, the Vanilla Edition. If we jump into the Harbour Text Edition, we have 60 info and 1 medium. So we're actually a little better, arguably better than the configuration for the vanilla version. And I think based off of that, the SMB signing thing again, this OS looks pretty good, not only on paper but also in functionality and usability. I'm not 100% sold on the Linux look or the Mac look of the Windows 11 operating system, but as a core, the Harbour Text operating system is actually a pretty substantially good configuration. We could dig further into the OS to see what else is on there, if anything, as far as configuration. But with what we see here, I would say I'm pretty impressed with it. I mean, it's no worse than the out-of-the-box configuration, which is important because we've seen a lot of the custom homebrew builds are far worse than the out-of-the-box configuration of the Microsoft Windows operating systems that they're based on. Since we don't see that on here, I would say this is a win. So I will put the link somewhere. If it's not in the description, it'll be in the wiki. Again, YouTube's been a little weird with putting links in there, so I don't know if they'll allow me to put the link in there. If they don't, then again, check the wiki. That's where you'll find the link to the Harbour Text website, or rather YouTube channel. I would definitely give them a shout out. Go check them out. Check out what other projects they have. If there's anything else on there that you guys want me to test or check out, just add something down in the comments and let me know. All right, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this one. Take it easy.